Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to the channel, and you know, it's that time where we take a look at some of the best Xbox Game Pass games available right now. I do try to post one of these videos about every 6 or so months because, I mean, there's constantly games coming in and out, and for that matter, it feels like on an almost monthly basis, there's at least 1 or 2 new interesting titles to check out. So there's not only a lot of games available in Game Pass, but there's also a lot of quality here. So the goal of this video is really to just kind of help you find some good games to play yourself. This ranges from your big blockbuster hits to indie games, and even a few games that might be flying just a little bit under the radar. Now, I did give myself a few stipulations for list purposes though. I decided not to include Halo, Gears, Forza, The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Minecraft. Now, the reason I decided to do that is really Xbox fans, they know these games are very, very good, as they're massively popular first-party games. So you don't really need me to tell you those games are good. But if there was any questions, yes, they are absolutely fantastic, and I would highly recommend them, as they are among some of my favorites and would be on this list otherwise. But I wanted to use those spots to highlight some other games to maybe help you discover those as well. In my own personal opinion, that's what's so great about having something like Xbox Game Pass, discovering new games. Without further ado though, I mean, let's just go and jump right into things, because this is one of my biggest lists yet, as we are going to go over 30 different games today. Yeah, there's a lot to get into, so let's just go and jump right into it. So to start off this list, I have to talk about a game that I think is absolutely perfect for Xbox Game Pass, being Pentiment. Honestly, I could have ranked this one higher, but this is a very unique game, and you can immediately see that with its stylized art style and its historical setting. You play in a 16th century where you find yourself in the midst of a murder investigation. Now, this is more of a story-driven game. Think of a point-and-click adventure where you make choices that can impact the world. So it is more of a niche title, but if you're looking for a rich story-driven experience, if you like history, or if you just want a good mystery, this is a game that you need to try. Yes, it's different than a lot of other games on this list, but that's also one of the great things about Game Pass. You can try it out yourself, and yeah, definitely don't let this one slip past you. Next up here, I have Flight Simulator, which is another game that you can technically view as a little bit niche. This one won't be necessarily for everybody, but it's also another top-tier title in terms of quality. I mean, just look at this game. I mean, it is almost photorealistic at times, but what's so impressive about this game is that it's pure aviation perfection. You can fly across the world and witness just stunning landmarks, and technically, you can even fly over your own house. It's almost surreal in a way, especially for those that have dreams of flying. And then on top of that, there's a lot of aircrafts to mix things up in terms of gameplay. Again, Flight Simulator might not necessarily be for everybody per se, but if anything, I'd say that this is an experience everybody should have at least once. Now here I want to highlight yet another really unique and high quality game, being Immortality. I actually did this on purpose, focusing on some of these more unique experiences to start off the video, because they might not necessarily be for everybody, but they are absolutely amazing games in their own way, and Immortality is just that. It's unlike any other game on this list. In this game, you follow the story of a young actress who's gone missing. You then get access to 3 of her films that were never released, and your job is to watch those and piece things together to kind of understand the mystery behind her disappearance. Ultimately, though, as you piece things together, you find a masterfully told story with fantastic acting. Again, this is another one of those games that I think is just perfect for Xbox Game Pass, as it is a little bit different, but absolutely, without a doubt, a great experience. And here I have Immortals Fenyx Rising, which I like to describe as one of the most overlooked open-world games on the market right now. It's actually criminal in how underappreciated this game actually is. But it is a very fun game, so definitely don't sleep on this one. It does play kind of similar to Zelda Breath of the Wild, and you can clearly see that with its climb mechanics, its dungeons, and even how you glide in this game. But with all that said, it still plays like its own thing at the same time. If anything, it's not just a simple clone. And hey, Xbox doesn't really have Zelda, so I mean, here's a good alternative if you have Xbox Game Pass. When it was first announced that Eidos Montreal, the studio behind the popular Deus Ex series, was working on Guardians of the Galaxy, it sounded like an interesting combo on paper. You have this highly talented studio working on a popular Marvel IP, and well, it did actually end up winning the Game Awards Best Narrative in 2021. And that right there is the exact reason that you're going to want to check this game out. It's a great single-player experience with fleshed out characters, it can be humorous, it can be emotional, and it's also, most importantly, it's fun. It is linear in structure, but its level design is top-notch with some really creative environments. The thing about this game, though, is that if you like this IP, I'm going to say definitely check out Guardians of the Galaxy, but even if you don't, this is still a good game. Now here I have the popular Assassin's Creed games. Really, if you're looking for a big open world experience, these are among some of the better games that you can play with rich worlds to explore in different parts of history. They have interesting plots and they also have fun gameplay. On Xbox Game Pass though, you do have two different options here. That includes Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which has you playing as a Spartan mercenary, and then you have Assassin's Creed Origins, which is set in ancient Egypt. Now I do prefer playing as a Spartan personally, but honestly, you really can't go wrong with either one of these games. They're both open-world RPGs with huge worlds to explore, and the main stories will span anywhere between 30 to 50 hours apiece. And next up here is one of my own personal favorites, the Danganronpa trilogy. Now it is important to understand though that these games first and foremost are visual novel type of games, so they might not necessarily be for everybody, but if you're looking for a good story, then look no further. These are dark and twisted games as you basically play as a student that wakes up in an unknown facility locked away from the rest of the world. In order to escape, you must murder one of the other students in the facility and then get away with it as the other students will investigate the murder. If the murder is caught though, they are then executed. It is an absolutely gripping story as you watch friend after friend betray one another. Now, growing up, I was always a big fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise and its beat-em-up games. They're just a ton of fun to play, especially cooperatively, and Shredder's Revenge proves exactly why these games are just so much fun all of these years later still. Yes, this is a throwback that's really going to hit you in that nostalgia bone, but it also stands tall for a modern audience as well. Quite simply, this is just a fun romp to sit back and enjoy with friends and family. Now, there's been a lot of games out there that kind of tries to replicate that top-down Zelda formula, but I don't know if there's a single game that does it better than Death's Door while also still standing tall as its own thing. Yes, they do share a lot in common, whether that be its Metroidvania world that you want to explore, its well-thought-out puzzles, and even with its boss fights. But, however, when it comes to Death's Door, in my opinion, it exceeds its combat with a little bit more strategical gameplay. It can offer an actual challenge at times. The only part that I don't like about this game, though, is its lack of a map. But other than that, Death's Door is a great overall game. One thing that we have seen a lot of here in recent years is Xbox getting more of these beloved JRPGs, and that includes the timeless Ni no Kuni. Its Studio Ghibli art style still pops off the screen all of these years later. It looks absolutely gorgeous, but if I had to describe this game in just one single word, that would be magical. It's a magical experience that combines a touching story where you explore a parallel world with an almost Pokemon-like battle system to it. You do catch these little creatures, you battle them, and you can evolve them, but it's more of a free-form action style of combat. So it is still different, but ultimately, Ni no Kuni really is one of the better modern JRPGs. Alright, so Tinykin is one of those games that just immediately sank its hooks into me. This is a collectathon 3D platformer that combines a Pikmin style of gameplay with an almost Paper Mario-esque art style, and it meshes all these things just perfectly. You do explore a bigger-than-life world, which I kind of think brings out a real kid-like curiosity out as you explore these massive everyday objects with some type of collectible hiding around every corner. It's a very charming game, but it's the gameplay that really stands out to me the most. Much like Pikmin, you have these little minions that follow you around, and as you progress through the game, you'll find more of these minions with different powers that gives you new abilities that completely changes how the game is played. Every level, though, is masterfully designed, and I personally think it sits among some of the better 3D platformers that you can play right now. Now, if you're looking for a good cooperative game to play, a favorite in my household is Overcooked 2, where you work together in some of the most insane and just over-the-top chaotic kitchens that comes to mind. In one level, you might have to prepare a dish on a flying ship with a platform that's constantly moving back and forth. And then in the next one, you might be working on a busy road where, for whatever reason, you have to prepare the food on the opposite side of the street as you serve the food. So yeah, just go and kind of prepare to get run over. But what I can say about this game, though, is that it's just an absolute over-the-top blast to play with friends and family. And here I have yet another Obsidian Entertainment game. We did talk about Pentiment earlier, but here I have The Outer Worlds. Now this is a witty first-person RPG that kind of plays like a mix of Fallout and then Mass Effect. You do get to build your own character in this game, and they really let you go wild with this. If you want to be your everyday hero, you can absolutely do that. Or if you want to be a bumbling idiot, well, technically you can do that as well, as you choose how the story plays out through its various dialogue options. The choice is completely yours. You also get to build a party with a colorful cast of characters and travel planet to planet that has a surprising amount of variety. Really, for some reason, there's just some games out there that doesn't get the attention that they deserve. And well, sadly, Prey is one of those games. But today, let's just go and kind of fix that, because Prey is an absolutely amazing first-person shooter RPG. In Prey, you wake up on Talos, a ship that's been overrun by an alien threat, including the ominous Mimic that quite literally can mimic objects within the environment. This always kind of keeps you guessing where your next threat lurks, but with its smart overall level design that allows you, the player, to kind of navigate its world in a number of different ways, Prey is an easy recommend. Now, you might have started to notice by this point, Xbox, they kind of knocked it out of the park when acquiring Obsidian Entertainment. We've already talked about Pentiment and The Outer Worlds on this list, but they've also released another gem, being Grounded. Now, there's a lot of survival games out there where you build bases, you gather resources, and you pretty much know what to expect from these type of games. They can be very addictive with their gameplay loops, they embrace creativity from players, and Grounded, it does all that. But it's also special in a sense that it's not just a survival game, but this is also a legitimate RPG coming from some of the best RPG developers, period. And they brought that expertise over to a survival game like Grounded. On top of that, unlike other games within the genre, there's also an end goal, as there's an actual story here, a quite interesting one at that. Really, I'd say that Grounded isn't just another survival game, but rather it's an evolution on the genre. Next up here, I have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which sits among the very best Star Wars games to ever exist. This one was developed by Respawn Entertainment, after all, the same studio behind games such as Titanfall and Apex Legends, so this shouldn't necessarily come as a major surprise. Still though, this is a cinematic action-adventure game, and it actually has a pretty in-depth combat system that can offer some challenge. But then it also has that fluid movement system that you've come to know from Respawn Entertainment type of games. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, but you really don't have to be when it comes to Jedi Fallen Order. It's honestly just simply a good game. Very rarely does it seem like we get rich stealth-based experiences anymore, but if you have something like Xbox Game Pass, you actually get some of the better games the genre has to offer with the Hitman trilogy. I'd actually go so far as to say that this franchise has kind of taken up that mantle as debatably the best stealth-based series on the market, thanks to its pure genius in gameplay and in its level design. In Hitman, no, you're basically put in a playground where you're given a task to assassinate a target, and really, that's where the fun begins, because it gives you, the player, the freedom and choice to deal with each target as you see fit. There's not necessarily one set way to deal with the situation, which makes you feel like a legitimate hitman. Now up next here is one of my own personal favorites, being Hellblade. And one of the reasons that I say that is because of how this game makes you feel. This is a special game in how it begs you to question your surroundings, the very reality that you see on screen. In many ways, I describe Hellblade as a psychological horror, as you play a tormented character where she hears all these different voices echoing within her mind. And this is done brilliantly from a technical and narrative standpoint, really putting you into the mindset of what it feels like to have her psychosis and the mental illness that she has to battle through as she fights her way through a Norse mythology world. Because the audio and acting is just done so superbly in this game, though, it's really an experience that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Now, when you hear about some of the best trilogies of all time, Mass Effect is always going to near the top of that list, and really, for good reason. Mass Effect is a premium sci-fi experience as you travel the galaxy with some of the most memorable characters within All games. Now, these are third-person shooter RPGs, and just as a bit of a forewarning, I will say that with each installment, the gameplay itself does get better and better, so do kind of keep that in mind. As for the story, though, this is where the series truly shines, as you choose how the story plays out with its various dialogue options that transfer across the entire trilogy. And while it might stumble a little bit in Mass Effect 3, the overall journey is an unforgettable experience. It's almost kind of hard to believe, but one of the most popular JRPGs worldwide is finally available on Xbox, and of course, Xbox Game Pass being Dragon Quest. Now, I do have two games to talk about here, though, the first of which is Dragon Quest XI. This game is an old-school turn-based RPG that kind of feels like it came straight out of the 90s, but more modernized with its visuals and world, and I do say that in the best way possible. There's a reason the 90s is viewed as the golden age for JRPGs. In Dragon Quest XI, though, you will go on a grand journey with a party of memorable characters, you have an emotionally gripping story, the art style is timeless, and of course, it has strong turn-based combat as well. If you do miss those 90s JRPGs, then Dragon Quest XI is an absolute must-play. Now, with that said, though, I do also want to highlight Dragon Quest Builders 2. Now, this is a very different game, playing more like Minecraft, where you build things. This game, however, is more focused than Minecraft, as it does have an actual story, and its combat plays out kind of like an action RPG. Personally, I like it even more than Minecraft myself, but yeah, definitely try this one out. Some people might be surprised that I have Omori this high on a list, but for those who's already played it to completion, yeah, they probably understand exactly why. This game, it honestly blew me away. What originally looks like a sweet and charming experience quickly turns into one of the more serious and dark games that I've ever played. While it is a turn-based RPG on the surface, and a good one at that, it's really the story and its characters that'll just make your jaw drop. I mean, I'm telling you, by the end of the game, I was blown away, and I was just so engrossed by its characters. Like, honestly, they feel real because of how well they're written, and the story is just wow. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers away, though. It's kind of best to go into this one blind, but just kind of understand it is a horror game that deals with very serious subjects, including depression and suicide. Now, there's certain games out there that's essentially created their own genres. You have your Souls-likes and you have your Zelda-likes. But what if I told you there's a game out there that captures both of those experiences in one fell swoop? Well, that's exactly what Tunic is. Now, this game might look cutesy on the surface and everything, but this is a very difficult game inspired by the Soulsborne series. There's those awe-inspiring bosses, it does have those quote-unquote bonfires, and it's got that methodical combat to it. Now, it's Zelda-like nature, though, that's a little bit more apparent, but there's also this engaging mystery that pushes you ever forward. Quite honestly, though, I believe that Tunic is quietly one of the best games that's released in 2022, and yes, it's available in Xbox Game Pass. You just gotta love it. Now, if you like good story-driven single-player experiences, I firmly believe that there's not many games out there that can stand toe-to-toe with the Yakuza series. The moment-to-moment action in these games are so thrilling with twists and turns around every single corner, and they tie that in nicely with its Japanese atmosphere, and then with its over-the-top beat-em-up style of gameplay. From top to bottom, I'd say that these are excellent games with lots of things to do, as you can actually freely explore their dense cities. Now, this is a long-running series, though, as all of the mainline entries, Yakuza 0 through 7, are available on Xbox Game Pass. Now, technically, you can start with Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is the 7th entry, but I'd strongly recommend starting off with Yakuza 0, which has a masterful story that not only keeps you on the edge of your seat, but at times it really tugs on those emotional strings. One of Xbox's new premier first-party studios, Arcane under Bethesda, is already showing their talent with Deathloop. We did talk about Prey earlier as well, but this is a creative first-person shooter where you play as an assassin stuck in a death loop, hence the name of the game. In order to break the loop, though, you'll need to assassinate 8 different targets in quick succession. But if you fail, the loop then resets. That's really kind of where the fun begins, though, as it gives you, the player, the creative freedom to discover the best method and the best route to take. And because of its brilliant level design and just entertaining story, it's always a pure joy to play. Alright, so up next here I have It Takes Two, which might actually be the most creative game that I've ever played in my entire life. And that's no exaggeration either. It is absolutely brilliant in how every single level in this game continuously changes things up in terms of gameplay and in its design. So this is a mandatory cooperative game, but please don't let that stop you, because this game it is amazing from top to bottom. You are absolutely going to want to experience this one. First off, the story is well done and it is highly amusing. You do play as this troubled married couple turned to dolls, and the only way to get back to normal is to work together. Now this is done in a number of different ways. In one level you might have to fly a pieced together airplane trying to escape killer squirrels out of all things, where in another level it might play like a third-person shooter. This is not just your typical 3D platformer though. There's so much more happening here, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that this might be the very best cooperative game of all time. Yes, it is actually that good. After years and years of Atlus and Sega being big doofuses, they finally decided to bring Persona over to Xbox consoles, including Xbox Game Pass. I mean, sure, it took them long enough and everything, but hey, it's better late than never. Now, this does actually include Persona 5 Royal, which you can play right now, and then also Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 are on the way as well. Now, technically, those two aren't available just yet, but I have played all three of these games, and I can say firsthand that all three of these do sit among the best turn-based JRPGs ever made. But the way these games work is that you play as your everyday student, and it's more or less a social sim where you manage your time. But then there's also these parallel worlds where they become more of a turn-based dungeon crawler. This is where you collect and fight demons and uncover the mysterious happenings that intersects with the human world. Their stories though, their characters, the atmosphere, the combat, and all of this are just so masterfully done. Again, all I can really kind of say here is that the wait was well worth it. Definitely go play Persona 5 right now, and when Persona 4 and 3 comes out, definitely go check those out as well. Doom Eternal might be one of the most smartly designed first-person shooters out right now. This is not just your typical first-person shooter. This is a game that combines fast and fluid platforming with powerful and precise shooting in increasingly intense gameplay. What's so amazing about all this, though, is that it's not just mindless shooting. There's a real strategy to it as you take on the onslaught of demons. id Software did it, though. They made a first-person shooter here that is the perfect blend of power and precision. And here we are in the top 3, and that starts off with A Plague Tale Requiem. This is a game that fits more into that modern cinematic adventure mold, but it really sticks out thanks to its atmosphere, its stealth-based gameplay, and also its emotionally driven story. You do play as a young girl trying to protect her sickly little brother as the two scour a rat-infested world. Now, as to the reason why there's rats that follow them around, and why they set off on their own, I'll kind of leave that a mystery for you to find out yourself, but do know that the story is absolutely gripping from beginning to end. Like, the further I got into this game, I just found myself liking it more and more and more. And then by the time it came to end, I was just kind of like, wow, it really does get better and better the further you get into it. And that includes its gameplay as well. You do have a lot of tools at your disposal, from a slingshot, you have a crossbow, among several alchemy-based additives. And you'll need to smartly manage these items to navigate around the various enemies. Now, you do have the option of being completely stealth-based, or if you want to kill everyone you see, technically, you can do that as well. It is important to note here, though, that this is a sequel to a very story-driven game, so I do recommend checking out the first game as well, being A Plague Tale Innocence. That's not available in Game Pass right now, but however, both of these games are absolutely excellent. And here at the number 2 spot, I actually have 2 different games because I do believe that they're equally as good, just in different ways. That would be Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and then Hollow Knight. Both of these are Metroidvania style of games, though they do focus on different styles of gameplay. Hollow Knight is more of the Dark Souls of the Metroidvania genre, focusing on its challenging combat. It's got a grim and dark world. Meanwhile, Ori is kind of the complete opposite here in both of those spectrums. It's got a beautiful and vibrant world, and instead it focuses more on its challenging platforming. In fact, its platforming is so good, though, that I think it's better than most traditional 2D platformers, especially when you consider Ori's platforming boss sequences. They will truly test your skills, but in both cases, Ori and Hollow Knight are among the very best Metroidvania games to date. And at the number 1 spot, I have Psychonauts 2. Now, I have always viewed the first game as an all-time great collectathon 3D platformer, which, by the way, is also available on Xbox Game Pass, so go check that one out. But not only did the sequel turn it up a notch here, but it completely blew all my expectations away. It's got quirky characters, it has tight platforming, the world is brilliantly designed, and it's one of the most creative games that I've ever played. Now earlier I did say that It Takes Two is the most creative game that I've ever played, but I mean Psychonauts 2 is right there as well, and when you combine that creativity with its excellent storytelling, its lovable characters with a good sense of humor, and its well-realized world, you get an instant classic. I mean, you don't usually talk about storytelling when talking about a collectathon 3D platformer, but Psychonauts 2, I mean, this is a really special game in that regard. It does touch upon some mental issues, so it's surprisingly deep, but it also knows how to be humorous and lighthearted as well. So from a gameplay standpoint, to its creativity, to its story, Psychonauts 2, I mean, this is just a special game that all Xbox Game Pass subscribers should check out. Anyways, though, that's it for this list, but hopefully you found a game worth checking out yourself. But if I did miss out on one of your favorite games, do let me know in the comments below. That way we can all just kind of discover those games as well. With that said, though, if you liked the video, don't forget to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.